Welcome to WNHHFM 103.5. I'm your host, Justin Farmer, inviting you to be in community with us, with people making a difference, and conversations and ideas that matter. Today, our guest is Jasmarie Melendez. Very, very, very excited to have the first term councilwoman with us from Bridgeport. Thank you for coming down.
Thank you. No, thank you for having me.
Um, so I have the honor, privilege of knowing you through the activism and love that you have poured into your brother in the campaign Justice for Jayson. But I also know of you as a person coming down to New Haven to work in the biology lab here at Yale, and so instead of introducing you in all the different facets, what is it like to be you, Jazz, as a person, coming into a space of being in politics?
That's a really interesting question. I don't think I've ever analyzed myself in that way. Because like you said, I think, at 19, I was going to school at Albertus Magnus in New Haven, and my brother was taken by a Bridgeport police officer. So my academia world of internships and thinking that I wanted to go to nursing school and do all these different things kind of stopped in some regard. I mean, I continued to, obtain my bachelor's degree because it was something I started for my brother and I wanted to finish. But my mind wasn't on school. I was literally in the streets protesting. And that year in 2017, when Jayson was murdered, so many other people also were being impacted by police violence. And every single time there was an incident of police violence happening, we were at the forefront of that happening. So that was kind of that journey. And then I graduated in 2020. And once I graduated, I kind of was, the pandemic. It was a tough time. I was I don't know really what I'm doing. But I was still obviously heavily involved in activism work around police violence. Doing a lot of work like that. And then I ended up running last year for city council. And it was something I never thought I would do because I was really kind of just, I feel hurt by the elected officials that represented me in the city of Bridgeport for not supporting my family, and just had a massive distrust for believing that change can come from that infrastructure. But when I was given the opportunity to run and I started canvassing and seeing that actually a lot of the residents in Bridgeport had known who I was, through what I was doing with Jayson, and we cried together. We I got to experience that my community was impacted by Jayson, not only my family, but the residents of Bridgeport were. And when people were I'm excited to vote for you and I want to vote for you, then I felt a really sense of responsibility to be okay, I do have to do something different in that seat. So then when I was elected in, I actually am the youngest woman to ever be elected in Bridgeport. Exciting.
How young are you these days?
I am 26.
26. Yes. Wow.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Last week I had crystals from Eli's Garden of Healing, and there's a garden that's being created in Hamden. Her nephew was killed on the Farmington Canal bike path, and we were talking about creating spaces to heal. And I remember a mentor telling me that they're like, you know, you run around the city doing all this activism stuff because you're looking for a place to be and to create a safe space. Um, in your case, you are that embodiment of a safe space for so many people. Um, what has that been like to go from campaign trail telling your truth to now sitting in the seat? Because I assume, right? Your experience might be different than mine, but I assume it must feel different.
It does. And it's funny because I always use the story of you coming to Bridgeport all the time and me remembering like you being one of the only like elected official people like being with us, and now I'm doing that, and I
Right.
really always think about that because I remember like when I went before the New Britain Council, I'm speaking for Catherine Cologne, and I remember you being that for our family. So now being able to do that for somebody else's family is like that's what we should be doing, and creating that pathway for other people, like you said, of safe space. I take it an honor when people reach out to me and are like, I've been impacted in this way, and I want you to show up for me because I've created, like you said, this network of people who are like, actually, they will challenge what's being said about my loved one. Actually, they will stand in solidarity with what our justice looks like. And for Jayson, I think that we've created that in a lot of different ways. I think it's powerful and it's symbolic for me to be in that seat as a form of justice for my brother all on its own, where so many of those council members counter protested us, disrespected our family. So now you have to see me like an equal next to you. That's a little bit of a feeling there. But also like what we've created at Jayson's memorial, the events that we've been able to do for Jayson, the sense of community, that is a part of justice that like I never like thought was going to be possible and means so much more than I think what people think of systemic justice, of what it would look like, for like a conviction versus the community that we've built that for now 7 years is my family, and we have all shared this love for each other, and is pouring that out into our community.
Mm. No, I was just thinking about, right now I feel like we're in such a weird place because the local level, I have so much hope, but the national level, I'll just speak for me. I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. How, I guess before we even get into your feelings about national politics and what's going on, can you tell us about Jayson, who he was as a person, and how your advocacy for him transformed the type of leadership you bring to the table?
So prior to May 9th, 2017, my brother was, I would say, like a typical 15-year-old boy, right? He was funny, loving. He really was into music. And he was, we grew up very closely together, we're only 3 years apart. And we had been impacted by a lot of systems that I feel many like marginalized communities experience, in Bridgeport. And, just being young and navigating that reality of what it looks like when your community is underfunded, when you are subjected to, disproportionate situations that are happening as a child in your home. So me and my brother were extremely close. And through all the adversity, like my brother had this spirit of just always wanting to be like happy. He never wanted anybody to see that he wasn't that way. Really like comical, always wanted to be joking around. And just knew how to like change the mood of a room. If it was like quiet in a room, he knew how to make it funny. If people were sad, he knew how to make you feel comforted. And that's kind of how I always like remembered my brother. And then I forgot the second part that you asked.
I think, I got involved mostly because I didn't feel I had a voice. I didn't feel that my voice was heard. Um, the years leading up to running, I'd been stopped by police 8 times. And having a neurological disorder, being stopped by police all the time, never knowing how a situation would play out. And I remember meeting you, meeting your family, and just wondering how to navigate a space of showing up, being part of an institution that I don't agree with, and being myself. And then we had the shooting of Stephanie and Paul in Hamden, and it just all came home where it's just like, oh, these issues are everywhere, and it really changed and shaped the way I thought about my role, where I used to feel very uncomfortable about going to other communities and showing up. And that changed after the shooting of Stephanie and Paul, because I realized it's all interconnected. And so I guess I wonder for you, how has your politic changed in what you view as a leader, and then how you view the station of being elected now, going from being in the streets as an activist to now being in that position of power? Because a lot of people project like, you can't be an activist, compromise is not a dirty word, da 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 da. Like, how is your head and heart processing those things?
It's interesting because I remember hearing someone say, like, well, now you're not an activist. Now you're a politician. And I was like, no, absolutely not. Like, I think every aspect of who I have been before I have this title now, I'm going to carry it over. And if not, push it even more. I really just see it as an asset, as a resource to my community to further my call. Nothing about what I'm demanding has changed. That's all there. And now I'm just navigating it in a different system. I think what I have learned, though, is that it is as bad as I thought it was. And
just that bad?
Yeah, exactly. It is as bad as I thought it was. And that a lot of people, don't want to challenge the role of what we can do with our position. Many already I have experienced that's not in our purview. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. That's not what you should be focused on. And I'm like, why not? Like, tell me why not. And I think that pushing that envelope is just what I wanted to do, and it's what I've been doing already with Jayson. When we talk about justice for Jayson, it's always been rooted in abolition. And that word alone, people are like, whoa, we can't even, I don't even want to have that conversation with you. But I'm going to still say it now as an elected official. I'm going to continue to advocate for abolition. And yeah, just pushing the boundaries, being in that space has really just been interesting. But I think one thing that I'm noticing is that people don't believe in politicians. So now that I have this title, I think I have to kind of prove myself even more to be like, hey, I haven't sold out, but it's hard to believe, and I don't blame people for that, feeling that type of reserved feeling towards now that you have this title. But
I know.
It's an interesting thing to and then my age, that's been an interesting thing to navigate. I'm the youngest on the council. They really don't respect me because of my age, I feel, as well as my views. And I think a lot of times people feel like my viewpoint is only coming from a place of grief, which should be enough. But it's also coming from the fact of I've educated myself on this topic. I care passionately about this topic. I can come to you with sources and facts and explain to you why I have this type of view. So I think people just shut down when I want to talk about any type of police accountability, because they're just no. You're just saying that because of your brother, but it's which should be enough, actually. But yeah.
For those of y'all who are just joining us, you're listening to Just in Time Conversations, WNHHFM 103.5. I'm here with Jazz Marie, talking about police accountability, talking about politics, talking about being the youngest elected in Bridgeport's history. in terms of, police accountability, um, Boulay, right? Um, had Officer Boulay, who murdered your brother, right? Um, has, from records, has had a history of altercations with community members, and yet that has not amounted to them being decertified from the profession of policing. You just talked about being an abolitionist. I view myself as an abolitionist. Um, you know what? Why do you feel abolition is the cure to police brutality or to policing? And then, what is public safety to you? Because I know for me, when I think about public safety, I think about streets, right? When I think about public safety, I think about access to green spaces. Um, but a lot of people, when I talk to them, their focus of public safety is explicitly solely crime, um, and reaction to crime, not necessarily crime prevention, but reaction to crime. And so, if you can help us unpack, how did you come to abolition, and what is public safety to you?
I like that question. I think that when I first started advocating for justice for my brother, I was calling for the officer to be prosecuted. I was calling for the state's attorney to find charges against this officer. And there was a point in that journey that I believed that there was enough evidence. I thought it was very clear as day that this officer should be held accountable for what he had done to Jayson. Once I get to the level of the state's attorney's investigation and they cleared this officer under qualified immunity, I realized that this investigation was never being conducted in the favor of the victim, but rather this investigation was just finding legal loopholes to be able to clear this officer, which 90% of the time is qualified immunity under saying that this officer feared for their life, which is the continued rhetoric that we hear every time when police kill someone. So initially, I feel at that point, I was just believing in accountability and change. And as I continued to see the process of realizing that as we were coming out to advocate for Jayson, the behavior of the officers, how they were treating us, I was like, why? Why would you not be against what just happened? Why are you also like taunting our family? Why are you also, violently arresting us? Why are you surveilling us, harassing us? We had snipers on the roof when we were coming to ask for justice with children around. And that picture right there made me realize that this is bigger than just James Boulay. Although he is responsible, and as while prisons exist and while our system exists, I believe that he should be held accountable. But I understood that even if this one officer was held accountable, the system that allowed for my brother to be murdered would still exist. And similarly to right now, what we're seeing with Sonia, and we're seeing that this officer was charged or was arrested, per se. But the system that allowed for these officers to have the authority to enter her home and take her life exists. From 2017, when we're thinking about Jayson, to 2024, when we're thinking about everybody in between, we've seen police accountability bills passed. We have seen body cam videos. Now all we get to do is just watch our loved one die. We get to see implementations of different use of forces. But then when it's not upheld, nothing is done. There really is no way of stopping what's happening as you keep throwing these reforms, and we've seen that forever. So when I think about public safety, number one thing I think about is the fact of the city budget. Mm-hmm. When you look at our cities, I'm going to take Bridgeport, for example. We just passed our budget that had an enormous amount of money going towards police. And they're going to go even over that with police overtime with no checks and balances. And they've been caught many times for doing overtime fraud. While there was no extra money given to education, affordable housing, food security, social services, and then we question why people view the city of Bridgeport as crime ridden. When your basic needs are not being met, then people are going to have survival instincts. And when I think about public safety, I say, can we take a pause in funneling the system of policing and instead massively fund education, massively fund all these other things that I spoke about, and with no question do I would put anything that we're going to see a complete different change. We're not focusing on that. We're saying, okay, we have this issue, let's keep putting more money towards policing, but yet all that does is expand the prison population. Somebody else is going to go do another crime. That's not preventing anything. That's not stopping anything. So I think about public safety as being interrupters before anything even occurs, not responding once the harm has already happened. Because what do you do at that point? Even when a police officer takes your life, now what do you do? Ultimately, I care about police accountability, but to my heart, I can't get my brother back. And that's justice. Justice is that he should be here, and that should have never happened in the first place. So I want to focus on a system that doesn't allow for Jayson to have ever been taken from me. Not what do I do after Jayson's been taken. Because I'm going to live, me, my family, everyone who loves Jayson, we're going to live our life until my last breath, missing and grieving my brother. So if I can work towards preventing that, that's what I'm interested in doing. And I think that a lot of people are hesitant to put away from like this system that we have been indoctrinated into believing is keeping us safe, because we're scared to question what would it look like if we didn't have this dependency to think that this is accountability or to think this is public safety, but rather what does it look like to do like community organizing? What does it look like to be in community with one another? What does it look like to hold each other accountable and not, just say our world's not good because of who our president is? What about the local or us, our everyday people? So that's what I want to focus on.
Talk that talk. No.
Yeah.
You were just talking about Sonia Massey, who was murdered by police July 6th. She had called because she felt unsafe. She felt that someone had broken into her home, her property. There was a car that was parked in her driveway that didn't belong to her. So she called 911. They sent police. She was cooking, had a pot of boiling water. Police told her to turn off the stove. She went to turn off the stove. The officer felt afraid for his life because of boiling H2O. And she was shot in the face and murdered in her own apartment. Time and time again, we see situations like this where this idea of qualified immunity comes up. You talked about what public safety is and what it could be. In terms of policies like qualified immunity, as you were talking, I remember the whole fight for you to get for your family to view the body cam footage. Like now we've gotten to a point where it used to be you couldn't see the body cam footage. Now we've gotten to a point where we see the body cam footage and we're horrified, and yet there are still policies in place, as you were so eloquently saying, haven't done anything. So in terms of policies, right, if I gave you a magic wand and you were the person for the day to change the rules, what would be some of the things that you would do?
If I really had the magic wand, I'd go all the way abolition. But I do believe in harm reduction, and I do believe that this is a gradual process that needs to happen. So I would say that, yeah, qualified immunity, number one, something that I believe needs to be completely removed. Officers need to be held liable just the way anybody else would. And an investigation needs to be occurring as a murder took place. The parallels of what would happen if a regular individual committed the crime is not the same as if a police officer commits the crime. Like, there's so many points that I always think about from an investigation standpoint that I'm like, how do they have that type of immunity to not look into any of those things? But yeah, I just feel like I do feel passionate about policy changes and a stance of harm reduction as long as they're rooted in abolition, steps towards abolition. And I think if our organizing work is still centered around that goal of decreasing police power and increasing community power, then I'm always going to advocate for that and always be in favor of that. And, like the body cam video is a great example, as like now we get that released, through the bill that was passed. But then what happens? Now we're doing it like a movie premiere. Monday at 5, you're gonna get to see this, and then what? Even now that this officer was arrested, but then what? This is gonna happen again, and we're gonna see it again. So I do believe in, harm reduction and organizing around that, but it's tricky when you are calling for police reforms because the police union and everybody who protects the police finds loopholes around all of that. So I think like us as advocates have to be careful about what we ask for. An example of that was when Jayson was murdered. His body was left uncovered for 5 hours, and everyone viewed it. And we were very upset, saying, "Why would you allow that to happen?" And they were like, "Well, that's a part of the investigation. We couldn't cover the body." And instead, what the city of Bridgeport invested in was fatality shields, and they spent money to have these shields put up. And that is just, thanks. Now you get to cover. That means we're gonna do it again, but when we do it, we're just gonna cover their body a bit for you. It's like, and they saw that as like a great win. That was a good police reform thing, people were saying. And I was like, no, that's not. That to me, that's all they're saying is that you're going to go and kill somebody else. And we'll make sure we cover it better next time.
Mm-hmm. I as we've been talking, right, Kamala Harris, right, some of us on the left see her as top cop, running to be president. We've seen, right, I know Bridgeport has passed a ceasefire resolution, and y'all had to fight to keep that instated as the city tried to backroll and backtrack on showing solidarity with the Palestinian people. What does it feel like in this moment for the Democratic Party to have a prosecutor be top of the ticket, and so how are you feeling about that? And then do you feel that is in alignment with the policies that the Democratic Party expouts that it wants to see and raise in terms of being a more inclusive party?
I think that we are in a very scary place when it comes to police accountability. I'm truly worried. We have Trump saying that he wants to take away any prosecutory like processes for police officers. And now we have Kamala, who was a prosecutor and is very, very much pro-police. And I believe that anything that ends up happening in this presidential election is going to result in a big backlash towards the progress that has been made around police accountability. I genuinely feel that in my heart. I think that the struggle with the parties is that in a lot of ways, I just don't like to focus too much on that aspect of like this politician savior feeling, because I feel that truly no matter who is there, we are in trouble. We're in trouble, and there is work that needs to be done, and it's going to have to come really from community organizing to hold these politicians accountable. And I say that all the time. Hold me accountable. Hold anybody who's in a position of authority accountable, and challenge what they're saying and challenge what they're doing, and put them to it, because it's one thing to say it, it's another thing, are you going to actually go forward and do it? So I don't feel good. I don't feel good about the choices that we have, and I don't feel good specifically about what is to come around policing in the next candidacy.
I've always struggled as a leftist who has been a registered Democrat, right? And so people are like, you're not really a Democrat, and just like, okay, well, you made a two-party system, so
Right.
sounds like a personal problem to you. Uh, you know, how I'm assuming you ran as a Democrat.
I did, yes.
How do you feel there is space in the party to change, to have more views like yours or mine be front and center versus this centrism or slide to the right on issues?
I think it would have to come with more people with our views taking these type of seats. And we do know that there is a whole democratic machine even behind who the politicians are. And they have their own interest and money and, unions. And that's the sad reality of it, is that there's like this wholesome aspect about, hey, these are my morals and views. And then there's this other layer of like power, greed, and money. And until there is enough people wanting to take these seats and these positions and that are Democrats who are going to challenge that and not care, not getting endorsed, that's another aspect of it too. A lot of deals get made, when you want that endorsement around, hey, maybe you shouldn't say that or you should say that. I wasn't endorsed when I ran. I petitioned onto the I petitioned on. And, I think that it's just not, it's difficult. It's really difficult for me to be in this seat because I don't believe in the system that we have.
Facts.
But we're navigating it because the reality is that this is the system that we have. And like you said, there's a two-party system. And I do obviously align with the Democrats, but there are definitely things that I don't agree with that they push forward. So I just think we have to have more people who are willing to take seats and to challenge the system that exists. And also, not needing this type of like backdoor machine to be in these systems and to be able to be like truly independent away from like the infrastructure that has existed. Example, like council people who've been there for 25 years, my whole life. Why?
My favorite thing when I was on the council to do was people would complain about stuff, and I'm like, fam, this happened when I was 10.
Right.
like this is not my problem. Like, you have allowed the same people to be in the room for so long, where we're doing 20-year contracts, 30-year contracts, and no questioning. So you're on the city council. You just passed the budget.
I voted no. Let the record say.
Budget season, I remember the long nights and the heated discussions. Now that you've seen the sausage made, for those who are thinking about running, for those who want to get involved but are skeptical of the electoral process, what would be your advice to them? What would be your heeding warning to them?
I would encourage anybody who wants to run to do it. I would say it, anybody, because there is a comfortability of when council members or alders have been there for so long and they feel like this is my district and nobody could challenge that. And I think that if people are challenging that, it keeps them on their toes and it keeps them accountable as well. And there is a real reality that you might not win the first time around because it's a system. It's a lot of learning curves. It's a whole, I'd learned so much that I didn't, when Jayson was murdered, I didn't even know we had a city council. Truly didn't. Like, I lived in Bridgeport my whole life, didn't even know that there was one. I didn't know about commissions. I didn't know about any of the things. I think, just educating yourself on the infrastructure of the government. Who's who has power, who has authority, what is it that you're interested on, what is it that you would like to change. That's a good starting place. But I would encourage anybody to run because I think that we need new people. I've been saying that forever. We need a revamp all the way around. And locally is where we we can start to see those changes in our city.
One of the things that, for those of y'all who are just joining us, you're listening to WNHHFM 103.5 Just in Time Conversations. I'm here with Jazz Marie. We are just talking about encouraging people to get involved, what that looks like. One of the things that I often hear that I agree with, but it's just, it's a catch-22 of, we have all these people who've been there forever, but then if we replace them, eventually our people will be there forever. But we don't want career politicians, but also we want people who understand the system. And so it's like, okay, well, how do we get that? If we don't have, do we have people who sit in seats for 10, 15, Bernie Sanders is an example, right? I have no beef with Bernie, right? Like, there's some policy issues that I can disagree with, but I'm just like, yeah, I don't really have a problem with homeboy being there for 30 years, because for the most part, he's represented my interests, versus other people, them being 2 years, right? 4 years. Heck, I'm not even in New York City, and I'm like, I don't like Eric Adams, right?
Right.
So how do you grapple with those things of, the contradictions of how do we get more people into office?
I've heard that as well, because I've advocated for terms for council. I've explored thinking about that, and I have heard, same thing, kind of like what I said before, which is we got to be careful what we're asking for, because if you have a good council person that you want to continue to push forward, and maybe somebody else comes in that has, going to undo all the good that just happened, you would be worried about that. And that is difficult. But I do also believe that new ideas are important, and I think it saves people from being like burned out and kind of, just being there so long that they just want to do the same thing every term. I think we could find people. I think I have faith in our community that no matter what, there'd be somebody that's willing to come in and do that kind of work. And I kind of would rather take that gamble with somebody new and fresh taking that seat than maybe somebody who's been there for like a really long time. And now, like, you could be a mentor to that person. It doesn't mean that your work is just gone and you just walk away from the community. We don't need to get held up on the title, right?
Thanks.
You can still do all the same work, and actually you have probably more pull. There's people who are not city council members in the city of Bridgeport who have more pull than I do, right? Like, that's a reality. So I think that the title, we have to like remove the ego of that, because you can still do that type of work. And now you can mentor this person. If this person's coming on and they're in your district, teach them and work with them closely, and it kind of be like you're still there, maybe.
No, right. Thoughts, feelings I have, but conversation for another day.
Yep.
What do you feel now that you've been in? What do you feel that you've gotten right? What do you feel that you've gotten wrong? And what are you looking forward to post presidential election nonsense? Like, what are some of the policies that you want to see on the local level?
I feel like I'm just learning so much, and I think you might relate to this as well. Like, your first term as a council person, freshman, is like you're just trying to figure so much out. I don't feel like I have like my feet planted yet. I feel like I'm gonna feel that like at the end when I have to like decide if I'm gonna run again. So I'm just like learning. I'm learning. I'm trying to figure things out. But I'm excited in a lot of ways, because I do see that there's like potential, but there also is a lot of roadblocks. And specifically for me, I've come against everybody on the council because I was advocating for justice for my brother. So there's like this relationship dynamic, as well there. Like I said, my age is a dynamic there. My viewpoints are very much different than a lot of other people on the council. But I've been trying to work in community, being respectful, and finding common grounds about what is going to better the residents. Because at the end of the day, I can put that to the side with how I feel about you to make sure that we can do something that's going to benefit the people who elected us into our seats, into our seats of power. So one thing that I really want to see pushing forward in the city of Bridgeport is a civilian review board. Since we don't have one, we only have a police commission board, modeling after New Haven, modeling after other places who do have both the police commission board and have a civilian review board, because we have zero oversight in the city of Bridgeport. So that's something I really do want to push forward. There's a lot of different things I would like to see change in our city charter, but that's like one of the main points for me that I hope I'm able to accomplish by the time my term is over.
As we come to the near end of our time, a couple of questions always come to mind, but like, where can people find you? How can people connect with you?
So I have Facebook. I have Instagram.
Hey.
So my Facebook is just my full name, Jasmine Melendez. And my Instagram is jmelendez BPT. So I post there. I communicate there through like messages and DMs and stuff. I also have on the City of Bridgeport's website, we have an email, a city council email, a city council phone number. So I'm always accessible.
Hey. And for those that often come to the hot seat, I get to ask my favorite question, which is a favorite song or song that we can remember you by. Protest is so much in me, and there's something about having a song that you can remember a person by that connects you to the words, to the moment, to the feelings. So what's that song for you?
I feel like it's so hard. That's like the hardest question of everything that you asked me. I feel like I want to say a Bad Bunny song.
Okay.
But I can't think of like which one right now off the top of my head. But I feel extremely, extremely proud, to be Puerto Rican and to be advocating for liberation of Puerto Rico and wanting to see an independent Puerto Rico. So I'm thinking of a couple of songs that he has that kind of hints at like the liberation of Puerto Rico, but I can't think of one. Just a Bad Bunny song. You put a Bad Bunny song on and you're going to say, okay, this is Jazz's vibe.
Okay, a Bad Bunny song.
Yeah.
Well, Jazz, thank you for being in community with us. Thank you for representing us.
Thank you.
As I always say, let us continue to plant the seeds of change so we can grow together.
Yeah. Yo, time to plane leaving? Alright, see you at the airport. I'm leaving on the next plane. I don't know when I'll be back again. Kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you wait for me. Hold me like you know I'll never go. Even though you know I will, I'm a traveling man. Moving through places, space and time. Got a lot of things I got to do. God willing, I'm coming back to you. Baby boo, I'm a traveling man. Moving through places, space and time. Got a lot